Hello, Ace family. Today is a very exciting day because we're going to be talking about stain. And the reason that exciting is for a couple of reasons. One is stain is a really fun way to help a customer with a project. And number two, it means spring's around the corner. We're working on this training and making sure that we're prepared to exceed our customers' expectations and have everything we need for the projects this summer. So, stain's a really big deal, and there's a lot of options between everything, and so we can kind of get to it. So the first brand we kind of have is the Thomsons. That's kind of the good. The Royal is the better, and then we've got the Cabot that is the premium brand that we have in our store. We've had pretty good luck with everything in here, but before we drill down too much into the product information, the most important thing, just like paint, the most important thing with stain is prep and knowing if you're ready for stain. So I want to familiarize you with the water drop test. And so what the customer needs to do when a customer comes in, say, awesome, you're looking for stain, we lead them over here, say, well, we can kind of get everything picked off that we need to. We have it all picked out, but really what we need to do is make sure the customer's in fact ready for stain, because if we don't have a good prep service, if we're not ready to go, the customer's not going to have a successful project. It's not going to turn out well, and this is something where a lot of time is invested into that. So I want to make sure you all have that in the back of your mind, that it's just a lot of time for the customer, and it's a lot of hard work. Usually they're doing this when the sun's beating down, and we just want to make sure we're respectful with our recommendations and what we can do, and the best way for us to do that is give them best knowledge and just be very helpful and ready to help them. Okay, so with the water drop test, what that is the customer, and we'll have to explain this time and time again throughout the summer, but the customer, how you know you're ready to stain your deck is you take a little drop of water or a big drop of water, just fill a little cup and just pour it on your deck somewhere. If that water looks like it soaks into the wood, you are ready to go, you're ready to stain. Recommended obviously that we clean a little bit, but we'll get to that part of the prep. But with the water drop test specifically, the other way it can go is the water can act like it's on wax or a kitchen table or something, and it can bead up on top of the surface, and that's when you know that the stain isn't going to soak in. So what the water drop test essentially does is let us know if the wood is soaking in that material or if it's just going to bead up on top. If it beads up on top, it is not ready for stain, and there's a few options with that. So just because it beads up does not mean that the customer can't do the staining that they want. What it means is we either have to let the wood sit out for a little bit. So this does happen on new decks. Sometimes if you have brand new wood, sometimes you can get that beading just as a final finish deal from the factory for the wood. Sometimes there can be a waxy sort of finish, but that deteriorates very rapidly. The other thing that we could do, or thing that happens, is maybe a customer's too on top of it, just making sure that their deck's perfect, and the coat still hasn't worn off from the last time that they stained their deck. And so if either of those are the case, regardless, we just have to do more prep. So we can wait and let it wear off, or if a customer's in here, they want to do it, that's great. We want to get them taken care of. The recommendation is to just sand that coat off, so they can do some light sanding. We've got machines for that. In the paint section, we have the sandpaper that can go with the orbital sanders, and just to give you some ideas on some tools, and they can sand their deck wherever the water drop test has failed, where it's beaded up, and they can do some light sanding and then pour some water in those spots again until it soaks in, and then as soon as it soaks in, they know that they're ready to go ahead and continue with their stain project. So when a customer is actually starting to stain, that's part of the prep, and that's a huge thing, is knowing if you're ready to stain. And that water drop test is simple and easy to explain, easy for us to remember. Besides that, the customer really just, we want to make sure that we've got a clean surface that we're going to be staining, and then we do have different brighteners and strippers. So if you have a solid base, a paint that's a deck that was painted previously, or you have a solid color stain that's on there that's maybe starting to peel, the recommendation with that too is, and it looks just like paint peeling, go ahead and sand it. I love to recommend, we had a customer in here one day, it was like, really, she had a very large deck, and she asked me what the easiest way was. It's like, well, honestly, if we got you a pressure washer, you can pressure wash all the loose chips off, all the loose chunks, have it nice and perfect. We can do a sander to get whatever doesn't come off with the pressure washer, and then when that's done, all the dirt will be off of there, and then we can go ahead and we're ready to stain the project. And so she took her stain, she took her pressure washer, and she took a sanding tool and a paint sprayer too to go ahead and apply the stain. So some of those projects are just great, just thinking about the tools that the customer might need for that. But it really comes down to common sense, especially when you factor in your training from the paint. It's very similar. We just want a clean surface that's ready to go, that passes the water drop test with it. And we do have some tools that can help with that. So one of those is the wood stripper. So if you do have a peeling issue with anything, besides the pressure washer, besides a sander, sometimes the wood stripper can help get those stubborn chunks off. We have a wood cleaner. So oftentimes a deck might be in a moist environment where you might have a mold or mildew growing on it, and you need to go ahead and get that killed and get it off. That can be stubborn even with a pressure washer to get off. So if you take some of this is a concentrate, just kind of pay attention to that. And then we have a poly deck sprayer, 1 gallon, 2 gallon sprayer. This can be coated basically the whole deck, let it sit, and then pressure wash it off. That helps immensely. The other thing we have, and this is actually pretty common around our region, is the wood brightener. And again, this is another bottle that's a concentrate, all part of the prep, making sure that we're ready to go for the customer. If the wood is just that old gray color, just a weathered gray, this will restore it to more of a natural looking wood, so that it's ready to go ahead and stain, get a product over there, so that it seals the wood and keeps it nice and ultimately structurally sound. So the other thing I wanted to talk to you about is reasons why you want to stain a deck. And basically it comes down to maintenance. It's the same reason you'd want to change the oil in your car, and that's in order to keep it nice. The sun and the heat and the cold and the snow and the wind, it is so hard on stuff around here, especially with our extreme temperature swings that we have. So with that in mind, with our environment, you just have to protect everything that's exposed. And specifically with that wood that's out there, if it doesn't have a good coating on it, the sun and the rain and the snow, it's gonna get in there, it's gonna deteriorate the deck. And so the best way to fight that is just to make sure it's got a nice solid coating on it to keep it useful year after year. So I think that covers most of kind of the prep, just to give you some ideas on pressure washers, orbital sanders. We've got drill attachments that will go onto there, and really just to make sure that we're talking about bare wood that passes the water drop test and also is clean. No mold, no mildew, no dirt, just stuff that's ready to go. So moving on from that, now our customer has a nice and clean deck that's ready to stain, we can actually start talking about stain. So I'm going to focus on the Cabot first, just because it has the most options, and then I'll use that same information to talk about the Thomsons and the Wood Royal, so that we have a clear understanding with that. I'm going to throw a lot of information at you, but just want to make sure you're prepared to exceed customers' expectations. So the first thing that I want to show you is on the back of these little doors in front of the stain, we have pamphlets. Do not be afraid, and I expect you to put these in customers' hands. Give them to them, because the more they can touch and feel something, the more senses we can introduce. It goes even further to help the customer feel confident, feel good. They're committing a few days to make their house, to improve the place that they live. It's a huge compliment that they chose us, and we want to make sure we return the favor and really give them good products, good recommendations, so they have all the tools to do it. So in these catalogs, Wood Royal has these, Cabot obviously is the one I'm holding, but the Thomsons has these too, and I'm going to kind of go through this, but these are back here, so do not be afraid to give those away. They are awesome to have, so customers can take it home, make sure they're happy with the color, and come back and get stain when they can. So with stain is kind of goofy. So in contrast with paint is, we have different sheens, different glosses. Whereas stain, you have different transparencies, is probably the best way to put it. And so we start off with like a clear coat, which is not on these. We have a clear. So if someone loves the look of their natural wood deck, we have a clear coat that's ready to go. We've got a Cabot, we've got an Ace version 2, Thomsons has a clear as well, but just a clear wood protector if you like that clear coat. Now the next thing is you start adding a little bit more color, and so as you add more and more color, you see less and less of the wood grain. So for customers that love to see a lot of the wood grain, the Australian Timber Oil is absolutely beautiful. It is gorgeous. Every time we've sold this, a customer always comes back in with pictures. It looks fantastic when it's done, and it's done well. Something you need to be aware of on the Timber Oil specifically is you always want to test just a little spot, because this is stain. So you're not gonna get, and I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, so we'll come back to that. So the Australian Timber Oil, you see a lot of the wood grain, and you can see it on the display on the fixture, and it's gorgeous. And then once we go to the Australian Timber Oil, the next step towards a solid stain is going to be a semi-transparent Cabot. And this, you still see a lot of the wood grain. It's a little bit less than the Australian Timber Oil, but you still see quite a bit of the grain, and we do pick up a few more color options with it too. So that's kind of the next. And then we go to a semi-solid stain. And the semi-solid, we pick up more color options, but we see a little bit less of the wood grain. So I always ask folks what they kind of want the look. If they want to see a lot of the wood grain, if they want to see a little bit, or they don't really care about the wood grain and want a coat on it. But this goes to a little bit less. And then we have the solid color stain. The solid color stain it basically resembles a paint. It's a paint that you can walk on. You don't have to prime except for in special circumstances, but this has the most color options, and it's actually one of the most durable besides the Deck Correct. And I'm probably gonna, I don't want to necessarily exclude the Deck Correct, but if the customer's basically trying to decide between tearing down their deck or building a new one, or trying to keep it for a few more years, that's kind of what the Deck Correct product is. You're not going to see any of that wood grain in there, It is a very thick, just if you have horrible splitting, maybe someone moved into a new house and the previous owner didn't take care of it, it is just to fill that until you're in a spot where you can maybe rip out the deck and start something over. But it does fantastic. It's a fantastic Band-Aid on what folks need, what they want. Gives them a nice deck that they can feel good about, and looks pretty decent when it's on. So back to the solid. This has kind of the most color options. Those are probably the most common when we go Australian timber oil, semi-transparent, semi-solid, and then we get into the solid color stain. Most color options and the most durable. The more wood grain you see, the more sun can kind of get into it, which is not a bad thing. Again, it comes down to looks, comes down to the preference of the customer. We have a lot of options here because everybody likes something different, something special. But the more wood grain you see, the more the wood that the deck is made out of, what it's constructed out of matters, because unlike a paint, we're except for the solid color, the solid stain, and the deck correct, everything else that's considered a semi-transparent, the color of the wood that the deck is made out of is going to play a little bit of a factor in it. And so it's very important, just when a customer does, try it, they want to make sure the color's good, just have them try, the size of half a dollar bill or something, make sure they're happy with the color, because it's not good to be in a situation where they've done half their deck or their whole deck and go, oh, this isn't the color I thought. But it's just the nature of working with stain that sometimes those colors can play a difference. And so I just want to make sure you know that I communicate it to you so that you can communicate it to the customer, that it's not a huge factor, but it can be a little bit, and it's a lot better to do a test section than it is to do a whole thing. So that's kind of my lesson on there on, hey, let's do a little bit of a test. So the other thing that comes with these is just the durability. As you see less wood grain, you do gain durability. So the Australian timber oil, if you have a flat deck, no shade whatsoever, it's in the beating sun in the on the west side of the house where the sun sets, it's going to get that afternoon sun. It in our area might be okay for 2 or 3 years, and then time to recoat it, just to keep up with the maintenance. Whereas on a solid color stain in that situation, you might be looking at 5 to 8 years, just depending on how that happens. And then you have vertical surfaces like siding or like fencing that can last a little bit longer just because it's vertical instead of a horizontal like on a deck. But generally, it just can last longer, and that just kind of a trade-off between seeing the wood grain, what the customer wants right there. But generally the durability, if that's the main concern with someone, the solid color is usually the way to go. And on that note, sometimes we've got folks that, I'm just going to touch on this while I'm thinking about it. We've got some folks that want to do like their trailers for their equipment that they're hauling. And so we do have some companies that want extra tread for safety. And so you don't really want to mix this with any of the semi-solid, semi-transparent stains, but on the solid color stain, where it more resembles a paint than a stain, sometimes we go ahead and sell them some of the it's a tread tex, a tread additive that just goes in the gallon, or once you paint it, you can kind of sprinkle it over just to give a little bit more just safety, slip protection, so that it's not as easy to lose your grip when, especially if something's wet. So there's my plug for that to help the customer in those specific situations. So now we've kind of gone over the solid stain. Coming back to the solid stuff that we have right here. you might be kind of asking yourself, well, why would I want to do a solid stain versus a paint? What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages there? And so, what I usually tell folks, just an easy way to communicate that, is a paint on bare wood or stained wood, you're probably going to need a primer for that. I mean, a paint's probably, it's more work to do a paint, but then the trade-off is the paint will last a little bit longer too. And that can be good. That can be a pro and a con. That can be good and bad. Where if you're doing the side of the house and it's a wood siding, you can go ahead, we'll do a primer to fill some of that, and then we can go and do a paint over that, and that would be great. If you're talking about a deck, we're still talking a primer to make sure we've got the most durable surface, but then we're talking about the like royal porch and floor sort of stuff, and that's fine, because you know, a regular exterior paint, you can't walk on it, and it really comes down to being able to walk on the surface, make sure it's nice and durable. Whereas a stain, most of these really, so we do have a primer within the Cabot. It is the problem solving primer, and it's generally, if you have if you're using a solid color stain and you're using lighter colors, especially if you're painting a fence, painting a deck that might bleed a little bit on the color and you want to seal that up so that you don't see that, that's generally what it's used for. But other than that specific situation, you don't really use primer. So wood is easier and faster. The stain is easier and faster to go ahead and apply, and it just doesn't last quite as long as the paint. And like I said, that could be good, that could be bad. If a customer might want to change it up in 5 years, then that's an awesome option for them. If they don't want to change it, it can still help it look fresh. And of course, you don't get to see the wood grain in a paint, whereas in a stain, you get to see the wood grain, and it is gorgeous when it's done and done well. So I think that highlights all the different transparent, semi-transparent sort of stuff in here. And so I'd like to go over, Cabot has something similar, so maybe move the camera closer over here. We can do the Cabot or the Thomsons real quick. Okay, so with the Thomsons, this is our baseline stuff. The good thing about Thomsons is it's less expensive, it's cheaper, more economical. The downside to it is, and I've heard this from numerous professional painters, is that once you use Thomsons, it's hard to kind of go to anything else. So once you kind of use it, you're more or less stuck with that product. Which, if you're doing a swing set that you just want to spray and it's just nice and cheap, or you have a bench or something that you don't care too much about, that you just want to make sure something's protected, or even a trailer, that this will do it. We have a lot of farms especially come in for boiled linseed oil. That is in the paint thinner and acetone section, and I should touch on that while we're talking about it. The boiled linseed oil will help to seal the wood, but it doesn't provide a lot of UV protection for the wood itself. And so the next step up from that would be Cabot, and that's kind of the baseline, kind of the starter, the good product. And it's fine if you're going to be rough on it, like a trailer application. I think Thomsons would be great, but I've seen people use it for swing sets. Some folks use it for a deck, but usually if they're committing a lot of time to a project, they want to make sure they have the top of the line product, being a wood royal or the Cabot. So just keep that in mind. Within the Thomsons itself, we have a clear for wood, and then we have a clear multi-surface. So some products in this section actually tie into concrete a little bit too, or brick, helping to seal that. It doesn't come up very often, but just know if you're trying to seal patio pavers or something, that stuff can help. And then within Thomsons, we've got some different colors. We've got the transparent, which means you see a ton of the wood grain. We've got a semi-transparent, which means you just have a little bit more color tone and a little less grain. And then on the very bottom, we have the solid color stain, which means pretty much no grain and just a lot of color. So besides that, that kind of covers the Thomsons. So now we can move on to the Wood Royal. Now the Wood Royal is going to take just a little bit more explaining, just because we get into tinting these with our paint dispenser. So as I said over with the Cabot, we have the cards behind here. Please put this in the customer's hands. You grab one, give the customer one so they can flip through the book with you. You can point some stuff out, and it's awesome. They get to touch it, feel it, look at all the color options available. While I'm going to mention color options, there's one more difference that I can think of between the paint, the wall paint, and the stain, and that's custom color matching. So unfortunately, it's a little bit more difficult just because of the nature of stain to custom color match stain. If we have a Cabot color to go into Asus Wood Royal, or we have a Wood Royal color to go into Cabot, those sometimes can work out, sometimes can't. I've definitely done custom stain for folks. Hopefully Cabot's not listening, but our local school, being orange and black, they wanted orange for the bleachers, and we made it happen, and it's held up great for the last few years so far, which is good. But not sure if I was supposed to do that or not, but it can be done. But generally it's a lot better for the customer just to choose from the catalog here. And there's another thing I want to point out in this that is different than the Cabot is all the way down, and this really attests to the different wood types. Right here, the top one, this is Navajo White on Pine, and the one next to it is Navajo White on Cedar. And so Navajo White is the color, but it's just showing you how the stain is going to look differently based on the different types of wood. And again, it's kind of a guessing game. We can mix a gallon of it and have them test a little spot, make sure they're happy with the color. We want everyone to be happy with the products they get from us, but just know there can be some color issues, especially when you're talking the lighter transparent stains. When you get to darker, it starts to agree a little bit more on the wood types, but it's just showing you extremes so that you can be aware of the variation that you could see in it. So the left side is all the semi-transparent, the right side is all the semi-solid colors. And then again, all the information, we've got plenty of those. Give them out to customers like they're candy. That's good. We want to make sure they have all the information to make a decision. So specifically within the Wood Royal, I told you that we get into mixing stuff. So we'll start with this. All the toner it's a very light stain, basically, is what a toner is, similar to the Australian timber oil. And on the toner, this is all pre-mixed in the Wood Royal line, so we don't have to mix this. And then, but when we get into the deck and siding stain, we've got, again, the different color options based on the type of wood that's present here. But we are going to tint this, and then we have the solid deck stain, and then we have the solid trim stain. And so I want to kind of explain what some of that is so that you can be the expert that you're going to be within the stain. Within the Wood Royal, I'm just going to look at the bases real quick. So we have our solid colored deck stain right here, and that solid colored deck stain is for horizontal surfaces like decks, like decks. Whereas the vertical surfaces, like maybe a bench, maybe a fence, maybe the siding on a shed or the siding on a house, that would be a vertical surface. And so that's why you have the two products, is we have the deck stain right here in a light, medium, and then a dark base right here for the horizontal surface, the deck stain. And then we have siding and trim stain in the light, medium, and dark base, and that's for the vertical surfaces. What can happen sometimes is, let's see, I just want to make sure, and then so for the solid colors, they're treated more like paint, whereas when we're talking about the transparent or the semi-transparent stain, it is actually one tint base ready to go, to throw in our shaker, or not throw in our shaker, throw in our paint dispenser so that we can get that to the right color. But with the solid colors, it resembles paint a little bit more, where you have a light, medium, and dark base for light, medium, and dark colors. So the difference between those, what I tell customers is, let's say you have a small deck. It's basically, it's mostly horizontal surface, and maybe you have some stairs and you have one side that has some edging. Well, I would tell customers, we don't need to sell you another gallon of the trim stain for the vertical surfaces. You can make the 1 or 2 gallons work for that, and then you have color continuity, and it'll be good. But that's in contrast to if someone's doing a deck and then they have a fence that they're going to do in the same color or different color. I would definitely, if they're doing a bigger area, I would definitely do the vertical surface solid stain for that, and then the horizontal stain for the deck surface that's going to be walked on. And really it just helps with product application, but also some of the durability on that too. Just the products are formulated just a little bit different, so hopefully that helps to differentiate between those two. So I think that covers pretty much everything within the Wood Royal. Now I want to go ahead and kick back over to the Cabot stuff so that we can finish off talking about that stuff there. The Cabot, when we're actually mixing the Cabot color, I just kind of want to go through, point out the bases to you. With the Australian Timber Oil, there's one tint base that we use, and that's this guy right here. Gorgeous label, really cool design. The next one is we have the orange. It's a semi-transparent stain, and it's this orange color right here. There's one product. When it pulls up in our computer system, I'm usually paying attention to the color codes on the bottom of this, where this one's a 16306, and I think in the computer it says a 16300, just to make sure that we pay attention to grabbing the right base the first time, or knowing where it is once we do punch all the color code information into the computer to grab that right gallon the first time. But I find with Cabot especially, it's real easy to look at the product number to make sure you get the right one, because there's a lot between the semi-transparent, semi-solid, and then the solid. There's and then you have the vertical surface and the horizontal surface too. So sometimes that's helpful, and ultimately the goal of this thing is to be helpful. So with the orange and with the Australian Timber Oil, it doesn't matter if it's vertical or a horizontal surface, those products are good to go to use like one. And then we get into this green one, the semi-solid stain. And so let's see, the semi-solid, we've got that guy behind here. It's kind of in a neutral base, ready to go, similar to the semi-transparent and the Australian Timber Oil. Moving on to the gold is all pre-mixed, so it's kind of like the, oh goodness, the wood toner for the Wood Royal is similar to the gold, that you just kind of grab it and go. With the Australian Timber Oil too, forgot to point this out, there are a lot of pre-mixed colors that are available in the Australian Timber Oil too. It takes special colorant to mix that. We do have that colorant, so we tend to mix it often, but just so you have a heads up, there are pre-mixed gallons, and then we can mix them in the shaker too. So moving on to the solid color deck stain, and maybe I'll skip that and the deck correct. It is a neutral base. It is generally mostly dark colors, and we've got that on the bottom. Redwood seems to be the most common color, but anyway, it's real easy. It just has one base too. But going back to the solid color stain, and again, this resembles the paint. What we have is, it looks like we have a lot of options, but we really don't. Really, there's a horizontal surface stain, and then we have a vertical surface. And so the horizontal surface is this red color right here, solid color stain for decks, and that's the horizontal surface. The purple label is the solid color stain for the vertical surfaces. And then within each one of those, we have a white base and then a neutral base. The white base being for lighter colors like your white, light gray, and then your neutral base for all your darker colors, your deep blues, reds, blacks, that sort of stuff. So it looks like we have a lot, but it's just really important to me that you know where everything's organized and have all the knowledge to back that up, help out the customers, make sure they have a good experience getting stain from us. So let's see. So that, I think that covers a lot of the technical stuff. Really, I want to make sure we get some knowledge on the technical stuff. Do not be afraid to ask questions in this section. Especially, we just want to make sure we're making the right recommendations, and it takes some practice. There's a lot of knowledge here to go ahead and get confident helping customers day in and day out with this. And then we have all of winter to forget everything, only to relearn it in the spring so that we're ready for the next year. Let's see. So I think that covers a lot of the technical information. There's one more thing that I wanted to highlight in this section, and that's this wet gloss cure seal. There's a lot of folks that like to do their driveway with this in our area. Basically, it's a sealer for concrete or patio pavers outside. This isn't a wood product, but this is just kind of concrete sealer to help just give it a good look, and this makes the concrete look wet without it looking wet. So this is a very popular product to go ahead and do with rollers, apply with rollers, or in a sprayer. It works great and it looks pretty good. So now we're kind of back to finishing this stuff up. So when a customer comes in, we kind of have to give them a lot of information so that they have the information to make a decision on what they want. And so there's just a handful of questions that we can ask them to help narrow down exactly which product they're looking for. So the first thing is, hey, awesome, we've greeted them, we've said, hey, welcome to Ace, what can we help you find? And they're looking at some state, maybe doing something this year, and that's great. We can take them over here and say, awesome, here's our stain section. We've got our Thomsons on the left, that's good. We've got our Woodruff Royal that is better, and we have the Cabot that is the best. What were you staining today? Try to have a conversation with them, be involved in the project. Like I said, I tried to pepper that into all the technical stuff. If they're doing a trailer, they probably don't want to spend a lot of money. If they're doing their deck that on the back of their house, then they probably want a quality product that's going to last them through the years. See kind of what they have time for, see how they feel. But generally, the good, better, best option is great because customers generally have a feel, well, you know, they generally have a feel with how much money they're looking to spend on the project, and it gives them a chance to look at the prices and kind of make that decision before we just hammer them with information. Go, okay, once they pick the Thomsons or the Royal or the Cabot, we can say, okay, awesome. The next question in that conversation would be, how much of the wood grain did you want to see? Did you want to see a lot of the wood grain? That's an awesome look, but it's not going to last it's going to be 1 or 2 years less as far as redoing this in the future than something with a semi-solid or a solid coating? Or did you kind of want the durability of it, give you more options for touch-up with the solid, and kind of have that? And then we can kind of get into, okay, the exact product they're looking for, at the price point, but also the semi-transparent, semi-solid, all that stuff that they're actually looking for. And let's see. Customer might ask too. Another big question is, well, what makes it, good, better, or best? And hopefully I tried to touch on that, but it's so important that I'm going to try to just go over that again real fast. The Thomsons, it's a good starting point, still offers protection, but generally once you use Thomsons, it's hard to switch to anything else. The Royal offers a little bit more protection, and you have to redo it less often than the Thomsons. It's going to last a little bit longer. And then the Cabot being the best, that's going to be the longest lasting product that we have. That's what makes it nicest. It's going to go on great. They've got good customer service, ready to help customers if there's questions. Hopefully we can answer all their questions, but it's a good name with a good product to stand behind. And that's generally what you get is just more durability as you go up. So if you're spending a lot of time on the project, that's why a lot of folks aren't afraid to spend the money here. But we just want to make sure we don't upsell anybody. We just get them what they're after, and most often it is the Cabot, just so they don't have to redo it in 2 or 3 years, that they'll get more time out of that. So but really, we just really need to take the time spend with customers. Do not be afraid to talk about the other tools that might be needed. We've had customers come in for the stain, get pressure washers, get paint sprayers, we get the paint rollers, we get the plastic, we get the tape, we have the sanding discs, the sanding machines. There's a lot of other tools that are needed for these projects. In some cases a ladder or a step ladder might be required too. So it's just making sure we can do everything we can to save them a trip, to get it in one trip. And if that doesn't go, then hopefully we can do better the next time. But there is a lot involved, and I'm just trying to give you as many ideas as possible, because a customer is they want it to be easy and kind of have all the tools and be ready to go, because it's not necessarily a fun task, but it's something that has to be done. So I think that sums everything up. As always, please ask if you have any questions, and we'll be prepared for spring and summer and be looking for the warm weather when we can help customers with all these projects. So thanks.